Tonight I have the great pleasure and to introduce to you one, if not the, role model for all of you, a guy who called himself a street philosopher and still has conquered academia, teaching all over the world. Every day I get another invitation in my email for him, not for me, for him. But he certainly deserves it. He started as a filmmaker, as far as I recall, it's a long time ago. Then he discovered architecture as a very worthy field of study, and as you know, architecture is one of our fields in this school, in this program. So we are not thinking that philosophy and architecture and media are kind of separated. They have to be brought together. Manuel DeLanda did this very early on, and one of the reasons he is at Columbia University in the architecture department. But his real importance for us is his reading and understanding of one of the key professors of our program, Gilles Deleuze. And so he is invited to introduce you to his idea, his reading of Deleuze, and he gives us always much more than that. Because what good is to just repeat a dead philosopher. You have to bring him alive in your own thoughts, in your own theory, and that is what Manuel in all his books tries again. And it's not the Deleuze you have heard of, the anarchist, everything goes, rhythm everywhere. So it's a very realistic, even near to science philosopher in his understanding. And every year, fourth year now, he comes back and convinces us that this is the case. Reality exists, guy. Don't believe you can erase it by fiction. So please welcome Manuel DeLanda.
Thank you, Wolfman. Speaking of wolves, I would like tonight to talk a little bit about Deleuze's fascination with animals. He always displayed a deep interest for ethology, the science of animal behavior and the study of animal behavior. And he was very serious in the way he took Nietzsche's warning against being human, all too human. For him, it was, particularly for artists, one of the greatest dangers that an artist could fall into, to live only within the small provincial world of humanity. Not that there's not much to express about humanity, not that the humans don't have a really wide range of feelings and emotions to be expressed, not that humans have not a wide range of skills and capacities to perform this expressivity. But there is a danger of closing ourselves into ourselves, to believe that we are the crown jewel of evolution, to believe that we were meant by God to be what we are, to believe that we were the chosen animals and we were given this paradise to use whatever way we wanted to. Of course, we are living in periods where ecological crisis and global warming and other terrible consequences of our industrial behavior and our practices have woken us to the fact that we are not alone in this planet and that we need to be the guides of this planet, not the owners and dirty owners of the planet. So Deleuze warned us over and over again against being human all too human. And that is one of the reasons why he studied very carefully non-human expressivity, and that is the subject of my talk today. I'm going to first give you, in a very rough summary, his theory of non-human expressivity. This is contained in a chapter of 1,000 Plateaus called The Geology of Morals. This is, of course, a play of words on the genealogy of morals of Nietzsche, but it's not just a metaphor. He's telling us geological entities such as the Himalayas, the Rocky Mountains, any sedimentary rock formation, when we see those bands of color running across the side of a mountain that has been blown apart to create a road, any explosion, dramatic explosion of a volcano, the very movements of the tectonic plates that are invisible to us but are dramatically changing our landscape at very slow time scales, but in the end reshaping our earth. Geology, for Deleuze, was the beginning of non-human expressivity. I mean, all of us, when exposed to something like the Grand Canyon, or even outside this building, when looking at the Alps and their magnificence, we're moved by that. And the moment we lose the capacity to be affected by those mountains, the moment we lose the capacity to be moved by those mountains, we lose something very important. And if we are artists, we lose something even more, because that means that we are becoming now obsessed with the human world, with politics. Not that that is unimportant, but if we become too concentrated on what is only too human, we lose sense of our otherness, of the real otherness, which is geology, chemistry, biology. So Deleuze's theory of expressivity in the geology of morals begins by saying everything, even inorganic creatures, express themselves. A crystal expresses its identity in its form and in its way of interacting with light and in its way of bouncing rays of light and refracting and reflecting rays of light. Regardless of whether there is a human holding this crystal and producing a rainbow, a crystal itself could refract that white light, produce a rainbow, and express itself. Even atoms, in their humble being, express their identity. When an atom of hydrogen or an atom of helium or an atom of carbon interacts with radiation, it leaves a fingerprint of its identity in that radiation. Astrophysicists can then take photographs of that fingerprint and identify, for instance, whether a star that's too far away for us to examine it directly is made out of helium, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, simply by reading the fingerprints that those atoms leave in radiation. And those fingerprints identify every atom as an atom of a given species. In other words, they are expressions of the identity of the atoms. It's like as if an atom of hydrogen was crying out, "I am hydrogen," or an atom of helium was crying out, "I am helium." Physicists can then, of course, use that expressivity, that information that atoms imprint as a fingerprint on radiation to identify them. But even without humans around, these inorganic entities were already expressing themselves. When we move beyond that to something like the coupled system hydrosphere, atmosphere, and it's, at least in this planet, it's endless variety of patterns. It's the constant emergence of tornadoes and hurricanes, the constant change of cloud formations with their own aesthetics and the different types of clouds, some more icy, some more fluffy, which are constantly changing that landscape in front of our own eyes. I mean, that skyscape in front of our own eyes, and expressing part of what makes this planet unique. Other planets have atmospheres, but they are much more boring and routine. Ours changes every single day. And it gives us a way of admiring that expressivity of the planet itself. So Deleuze begins then with geology and crystals and says, non-human expressivity begins as a three-dimensional form of expressivity. It's in the very form of the crystals, in the very form of the mountains, in the very three-dimensional form of the clouds that we see their expression. It's a voluminous expression, as he says. The first great change in that expressivity was when three-dimensional expressivity became one-dimensional, when it lost two dimensions and became DNA. DNA, of course, stores information in a very real way. There's a code in DNA that is very real, it's not a metaphor.